Hi, Annie. Thank you for letting me do a little recording of an interview with you. As you know, my name is Sofía Magaña. I'm a first generation Mexican American student at CSU Monterey Bay. My university is mostly working class students. And I really wanted to talk to you and just ask, first of all, where did you grow up and what motivated you to choose a career in journalism?
Hi, Sofia. Thank you so much for talking to me. Um, I was born in a small industrial town in Pakistan. It's named Faisalabad now, but earlier it was called Layalpur. And then I studied in Lahore and Islamabad, and I did my majors in anthropology, cultural and political anthropology. And after working with a couple of grassroots organizations after my degree, I realized that I wanted to be a journalist rather than, because I liked storytelling more than, um, anything else.
Yeah, of
And
course.
when I was studying in Pakistan, we didn't have media anthropology, which I missed a lot. And coming to media was some, in between anthropology and journalism. So that's how I started. At some point, I always knew I wanted to be a journalist or a storyteller.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. I saw that you've been a journalist for over 10 years and that you cover socio-political issues and rally for support of progressive and tolerant global societies. I wanted to ask you, what advice do you have for watching HCOM majors that are thinking about pursuing a career in journalism?
Advice, I think everyone knows at some point that they want to pursue politics or journalism or any other humanitarian field. But working in this field within, I don't practice mainstream journalism, for example. I don't have, I never, I was never inspired to be one, to be an anchor or um, conflict, a person who's like hopping
Mm.
from one conflict to another. So somehow it paved its own way, the kind of journalism now I'm doing, which is more like alternative um, news, which we talk about. And it's at times very hard to explain it to people back home who think that, okay, I don't see your byline in Pakistani newspapers, for example, or in some big newspapers. So journalism has like different forms. It's if you like telling or treating others stories, then you should pursue this career. And it has so many different fields. You don't have to be like one person. You don't even have to like just, and there's so many mediums as well. You want to be print journalist, you have choices. Like right now you're doing your bachelor's, if correct me if I'm not wrong. So you can explore. Start with working with your college magazine, for example, and explore what kind of beats are close to you and what kind of stories, for example, you would like to talk about, women issues or domestic abuse or local, for example, in your area. Um, like very simple issues you could start with. Or some people, for example, if they're not interested in politics and sociology, or they go for lifestyle, for example. And when I talk about mediums, one could do podcasts, one could do multimedia, one could do TV, print, and whatnot. There's so many mediums right now.
Yeah, thank you so much for going through that. We've definitely covered the different mediums that there is in media these days, and our teacher gave us the same advice. Go into the school newspaper, follow local news, and that will really help you understand the world better. Start from the bottom up. Thank you so much. And right now, are you living in Pakistan?
No, I'm based right now in Myanmar, Yangon.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I had to
Yeah.
look it up and I saw where it was, but I just wanted to double check to make sure I was right. Well, I do have a couple questions about Pakistan, if you don't mind. Reporters Without Borders ranked Pakistan 142 out of 180 on the press freedom map. And since um, you do live very far away from the West countries, I want to ask you, how do you think that countries in the Middle East, Asia, are portrayed in the West? because in the United States, we mostly hear that it's heavily censored, that the press is always censored by the military or the government. Have you ever felt this?
Pakistan very sadly has gone like 2 points lower in the rank of RSF's index. And also, CPJ, the Committee to Protect Journalists, said that Pakistan military, which has ruled the country for roughly half of its like 70 plus years of history, it restricts reporting by barring access, encouraging self-censorship through direct and indirect acts of intimidation, and even alleged instigating violence. And there's so many journalists right now who can't say what they want to say. I was last week in Pakistan attending the first ever Sahafi Summit, Sahafi Meet Journalists, um, which was um, which was amazing to see actually um, old colleagues and also new journalists and some people we don't agree with, but they are our colleagues by the end of the day, to sit in one place and talk about like solutions. And one thing which I would like to mention here is in that we could talk only on one condition, that it was Chatham House rules, and nothing anyone was talking would be attributed to them, because we all know, because the fear is so high right now in Pakistan, and people don't, journalists even among our community, no one trusts each other. It's very simple to call out someone as a traitor right now, A, and vice versa. They could call you if you have a soft corner for the country. They can easily call you out as an ISI or like intelligence tout or troll or whatever. It's kind of like an abuse, and there's an undertone to it. And I met many journalists who are right now facing trial as well. One of our colleague, it's one of its kind case. Pakistan has a Pakistan Electronic Crime Act, which was passed in 2016, and it's it's a draconian law against like freedom of speech and freedom of press. And one of the journalists, he is actually facing this it's not gone to trial yet, but there's an FIR registered against him for tweeting anti-state stuff. What he was doing his duty. Apparently, he did some shows on enforced disappearances, which is one of the biggest human rights issue in the country, and there's hundreds of young men, mainly, they have been disappeared. And there's a non-violent political grassroots movement which has come out from the country in the last 1 year. It's not much covered by the international press because the news is not coming out. There's a total blackout from mainstream media. That movement is called Pashtun Tahaffuz movement, or Pakistan, like PTM. And Pashtun is very interesting, and this is the same belt which is from the after 9/11. The whole world it was a center of the news coming. The news was coming. We're churning like news from that area, Afghanistan and Pakistan, like the bordering area. It's a tribal belt, and somehow it's very difficult for people to accept it, that these people who we always portrayed as wild west kind of like men having like guns and fighting wars for Pakistan or Afghanistan are now suddenly come up, and very soft spoken men, educated, and university graduates. And one of the person who's leading this movement is uh, his name is Manzoor Pashteen. He's a doctor and left his practice, 25-year-old. So it's a movement of millennials as well, what we see. And they are using digital media to get their point out. So this is what's happening right now in Pakistan. So Pakistan has always been like, because I come from there, no matter how much, I left home like 12 years ago to pursue my career. I say I have different homes, but because I have a Pakistani passport, so somehow I'm always being thrown as like, or identified by others that I'm a Pakistani. So I end up going back and end up like working because I have more access to the country. So yeah.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. That was actually my next question. What news stories you wish had more focus in the global news. And we've been learning about globalization and the CNN effect, how some news stories are worthy of focus, but they don't really receive it if they're not connected to the Western countries. And I really appreciate you talking about that.
It's interesting, like, what's newsworthy? And I think to have a news sense, it takes. When I started my career, I started from the desk job in Pakistan. And I used to do wire services. When you say, like, in the newsroom, you do wire service, that shift means that from 10 to 12 hours, you would be just monitoring, like, main news wires, AFP, Reuters, AP. And then the internet came. It was that time we had, like, access and subscription to some international newspapers, and I used to monitor around 60 newspapers and pick up, like, use search engines, where's Pakistan written, and then we used to pick up articles. And it's quite funny that that practice was AP, AFP, and Reuters. The newsroom I was working, media organization, they used to pay for that. But for others, we used to just steal, pick, and and publish it. And there were lots of, like, letters used to come from Guardian or the New York Times that, this is not on. But that's what, like, developing countries, they do. And there's very less understanding about copyrights. But coming back to the new sense, so it took me time to understand. My main duty, or whoever used to have this shift, was to pick stories relevant to the country, and also to different segments. There's one page which is like front back page. You put file, you make different files. And then there were, like, regional pages, then into foreign pages. And then I still remember when first week I was doing it, I used to take the to editor my I used to take all these things to him before his, like, editorial meeting. So for news editor, the first week I used to take, like, this much pile, imagine, like, printing, because I used to think everything is important. And over the time, I came to 12 pages, 12 to 15 pages.
Oh my gosh.
So you develop, because he used to, like, first day he was, like, looked at me, and news editors are arrogant. They might have changed now, but back then I remember the smirk on his face, and he, like, just throwing it, like, I don't have time. First day he checked, second day he checked, and then he said, Annie, I cannot go through all of these. Check the newspaper. And for news sense, one needs to read a lot, read newspapers a lot. It depends. Are you interested in regional newspapers? Then read your local newspapers, listen to local radio, FM stations, or community radios. If you're interested in international news, then read, like, international newspapers. And it depends on language. If you're, like, interested in Mexican politics, or the Spanish world, or French, and it depends. And now things are very easy thanks to the internet. This is a positive side, that everything is accessible, and you can read it but then it also makes it difficult too, because too much choice, there's too much clutter. I think that's the one, at your stage, students should read a lot, because reading really helps. And read good newspapers, not trashy. And then you make your own path, that, okay, for example, some would, in your own classroom, would go for, like, human rights issues. Some may like, politics more. Some may want to, like, someone would say that, oh, I like sitting in a parliament and covering that. So it depends.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, we've been talking about what type of mediums are reliant, have good sources, which ones are not. We've definitely covered that in class. And I want to ask you a little bit more about your career. You're doing a lot right now. And where do you see yourself in the future?
Sorry?
Oh, where do you see yourself in the future in your career?
In my career, where do I see? I think I'm very... one thing I always knew, that I don't want to do the kind of journalism what others expect from me, or what is a normal kind of evolution pattern for women journalists are. I carved kind of my own like space that where and think I was actually, I think that normal would be that I continue doing what I'm doing right now, or go for like some teaching job or write a book. But deep inside, what I really want is right now, I want to go back to reporting. And I have been like, telling my friends as well who are still like, they were reporting in the last like 6 years. I stopped.
Oh,
And like reporting in a way like in the field, I do like write, but going on like proper assignments. Last I did like, which is paid for, was like a few years ago. And I've, for example, in Myanmar, from here, I've been writing more of analysis pieces. And I did try recently doing like 2 minutes video reports. So I really loved doing it. And other people don't like, they really thought that it's just like I'm doing one off. But I think I really want to go back in a newsroom and to maybe like pass on like what I have learned over the years, the information or like practices. So I see myself going in that direction if I continue to live here in Myanmar or anywhere else. Yes. Yeah.
yeah. I think that's really good for budding journalists to hear that they need to find their own path. And just hearing you talk about self-censorship and limitations and trying to work hard even if you're being censored, that was really inspiring. We definitely covered that in class too.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. It's difficult. Yeah, because censorship. I've seen like over the years. I've worked with an organization that supports safety and security of journalists, and I've seen very close friends losing their loved ones and or losing their own lives, or now living in relocation in some unknown places or even known places, living a very simple life because of this profession. This profession may sound very sexy to some people, but there are many places in the world where it's dangerous to be a journalist. It's life threatening. And there are some practices one should do, and I would really like whoever in your class would like to pursue this career, this journalism as a career, to always remember that it's important to be truthful, it's important to bring the new story out, but always live a life to do another story. That's more important.
Oh, that's a great place. That's a great place to finish. Thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you so much and take care.
Thank you so
Bye.
much for the opportunity. Have a great day. Bye.
1 second. I'll just take a Instagram picture of you and me.